We're very, very excited about that. We don't take it for granted that you were invited and turn up. We do appreciate and would like to convey our gratitude for your presence here this evening. We are not going to have a very long program. Our intention is that we should be here not more than 2 hours, as I said earlier on. So let me quickly indicate the various sectors that we invited who form part of this occasion. We've invited the Durban Chamber of Commerce, and we know that the delegation from the Chamber of Commerce is here. We've invited the South African Medical Association. We've invited from the sport fraternity, we invited the South African Football Association. We invited the Rugby Union. We invited the KZN Growth Coalition. We invited the PPF, Progressive Professional Forum. We invited the BLA, the BMF, the Islamic Business Community, NADEL, engineers, and NH, PSA. And of course, we also extended an invitation to have a representative from the ANC Youth League, COSATU, the Communist Party. Each one of them were invited to send a representative, and I know that all of them are here. And we invited our organized sectors in and around the eThekwini, who are also with us this evening. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I indicated earlier on, if I have excluded any of the guests who are here, my apology in advance, and I will correct that in the next opportunity when I'm standing on the podium. For now, I would like to briefly take you through the layout of the program without so much details about that. What we will do in the next 2 minutes or so, we will invite our provincial chairperson, who's also the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Comrade Sihle Zikalala, to briefly outline the purpose of our engagement this evening, and also on the same vein, introduce President Thabo Mbeki as our main speaker. I will not come back to the podium, so when Comrade Zikalala does the purpose and introduce President Thabo Mbeki, he will also lead him to the podium to deliver the message of the day this evening. And then soon after that, we would allow an opportunity for about, well, let me not say time, but we'll see how we manage time to ensure that we allow an opportunity for what is called on the program, questions and comments that would be coming to any of us participants who are here this evening. Because as we said, this is an interaction with the different sectors of our society. And after that, we will then allow President Thabo Mbeki to come back and make concluding remarks. And of course, in an event where some of the questions and comments require some specific answers to be provided by the leadership of the ANC in the province, which is equally a leadership of our provincial government, We have amongst us here not only the chair who's the premier, but also some of his colleagues who are MECs. But the chair will determine in case there are certain issues that need to be responded to by that leadership of our provincial government. And then after that, we will allow our member of the National Executive Committee and the Deputy Minister of Arts and Culture, Sports and Recreation, who's a convener of deployees of the National Executive Committee in KwaZulu-Natal, to then do a vote of thanks on behalf of the National Executive Committee and on behalf of all of us. So without much ado, let me now invite the provincial chairperson of the ANC to come to the podium. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Comrade Provincial Secretary of the ANC, was also a program director, Comrade Mtumsen Tuli, the former president of the ANC and our republic, former president, Comrade Thabo Mbeki, the member of the National Executive Committee and the Deputy Minister, Comrade Thabo Mbeki, the leadership of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, as well as other structures, the leadership of the South African Communist Party, COSATU and SANCO, the leadership of the ANC Women's League, Youth League, the Veterans League and the Young Communist League, the leadership of the business sector, led by the co-chairperson of the KwaZulu-Natal Growth Coalition, Mr. Moses Tembe, and the entire team from the Growth Coalition, chambers that are here, especially the Durban Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the CEO, Ms. Pali Sapiri, the members of the Provincial Executive Committee or Executive Council, MECs in government, CEOs of our public entities, the leadership of the Progressive Professionals Forum, all other professionals and fraternal bodies that have responded positively to our invitation, members of the media, comrades and all. We gather here on the eve of the South Africa's historic local government elections to be held on the 1st of November. And the sole purpose of this gathering today is to again mobilize all progressive forces to the front line of the democratic process. And we expect that today, as the ANC, through our former president, we will take all of you and present our manifesto, not just as a promise, but a commitment toward bettering the society and uplifting our communities. And therefore, it is a distinct honor to receive Comrade President Mbeki once again in KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you, Zizi, for accepting this invitation. As the ANC, we remain committed to the consolidation of a free and a democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, united and prosperous society that delivers a better life for all our people. We are armed with a vision, fortitude, and courage of the generations that precede us. The very same ground we stand on is rendered sacred by the name of Inkosi Albert Luthuli, President General of the African National Congress. He taught us that the road to freedom goes via the cross. And 60 years ago, he became the first African to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. We mark the 150th anniversary of the birth of our founding president, Dr. John Langalibalele Dube. But this is also a year which our movement, the African National Congress, has dedicated to mark the 150th birthday anniversary of our pioneer freedom fighter and the gender activist, Mama Charlotte Maxeke. While yesterday we saw history repeating itself as we observed the birthday of former President Oliver Tambo, the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Ahmed Timol in the police custody, and the 13th year anniversary of the passing away of the literal giant Ezekiel Mphahlele, who made immense contribution in the drafting of the Freedom Charter in 1955. As the ANC, we draw strength from these giants of our glorious movement, who will always be reminding us that much still needs to be done. We remain committed to the consolidation of a free and democratic South Africa. From Nazareth, we have resolved to embark on the three strategic tasks, namely organizational renewal, building unity and cohesion within the movement and in the society, and ensuring radical economic transformation to include the previously marginalized into the mainstream of the economy. From then, that renewal is about and from below to the top, fighting corruption, consolidating the institutions of the state and government, building a capable developmental state that can fulfill its role of tackling the root causes of underdevelopment while restoring the dignity of the people. In government, we have been driven by the resolution to advance radical economic transformation. We do so based on a clear and a coherent program, not reckless and not just rhetoric. Equally, we're working hard to stimulate the economic growth and make conducive environment for the economy of the province to grow and contribute to the GDP of the country. Hence, on Monday with MEC Pile, we were in Pinetown opening a Tetra Pak manufacturing plant. And the day before yesterday, we were with the president at Toyota South Africa, opening another investment in the province. Again, yesterday, we have been overseeing the rollout of Operation Vula, which is our government program that seeks to provide support to SMMEs. We see in our transformation agenda what former President Pilsika Isaka Seme envisioned, the regeneration of Africa. The engine room of that renewal, that revitalization, that regeneration will be you, the young professionals who are gathered here, the business sector, various members of NGOs, the academia, and all who must contribute in the socio-economic emancipation of our country. We all carry a responsibility, and we must therefore quicken the tempo to eliminate poverty, unemployment, and inequality, which continues to breed racial intolerance and gender oppression. We're grateful that today we will benefit from the fountain and the reservoir of knowledge, former president of our country and former president of the ANC, Comrade Thabo Mbeki. In all of his activist life, President Mbeki has consistently embodied hope that by working for a human-centered world, we will attain a better life for all. And as the ANC cadres, we learn from him that for the ANC to successfully play its role to create a South Africa that is truly united, non-racial, non-sexist, equal and prosperous, it has to be business unusual, that all hands must be on deck. Comrade Thabo Mbeki joined the ANC Youth League in 1956 at the age of 13, and he left South Africa for exile in 1962. Comrade Mbeki is known as an economist who holds a master's in economics. He has been a member of the African National Congress National Executive Committee since 1975 and served as the Deputy President of the ANC and the Deputy President of our country. He then served as the President of the ANC, elected in 1999 and again elected in 2004. He is currently the chair of the AU High-Level Implementation Panel for Sudan, which is assisting the democratization process in Sudan. But upon his retirement as President of the Republic, Comrade Mbeki set up the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, of which he is a patron, to pursue the ideals of Africa's renaissance, but also to contribute in the development of young leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ujama Kasjatu, Comrade Mbeki. Let us all stand up and welcome him to the platform. Over to you, former President. Thank you.
Thanks. Are you going to do it there?
Sorry.
That's okay. Thanks. Please, let's sit down. Thanks a lot, Comrade Sihle. Let me first join the provincial chair of the ANC and the secretary in saying to everybody, thank you very much for coming this evening. I hope we can have a bit of a conversation among ourselves about some of these challenges which face our country. And so I'll try not to be too long so that we do have a bit of time for the interaction which the Comrade Provincial Chair spoke about. But I think let me start by saying I think all of us are of one mind about a number of things. One of of them is that we have an economy that is in crisis. Nobody will debate that. Which is producing many negative results. And one of those negative results is high levels of poverty, which of course means also the high levels of unemployment, a lot of suffering. I think all of us can see it. We see it on TV. If we don't move around the country, you see it. There's extreme levels of poverty, which mean extreme levels of human suffering. We have to do something about that. I think we also see that as Comrade Provincial Chair was saying, it's on the eve of the local government elections. We see that the system of local government, in very good measure, is also in crisis. In many municipalities, it is not working. That's a reality. I'm saying that I'm quite sure that none of us will debate or disagree about. So we're going to do something about that. Because we see the consequences of it. You know, when you hear the stories and you see the pictures, when people talk about raw sewage drifting down their roads and streets, and the terrible smell, and you can't breathe. I'm saying just an illustration of what's wrong and what needs to be done. Again, I imagine that we wouldn't debate that among ourselves, that we need to do something about that system of local government. I think we'd also not disagree that one of the big challenges that we face is a serious problem of corruption, impacting across society. But in this instance, I just want to talk about corruption as it impacts on governance. Again, I don't think we can debate that, but it's a matter we must attend to. It has very, very direct relevance, as all of us know, to the matter about how our national resources are being managed and what is being done in terms of producing a governance system which truly addresses the interests of the people. So naturally, all of the manifestos, I've not read all of them, the political manifestos for the local government elections, but many of them will address all of these things. The parties naturally will say, we'll produce jobs, we'll produce better managed municipalities, we'll build roads and clinics and schools and so on. will end corruption. And I don't imagine as any of the people contesting these elections is not saying those things. And indeed, I think the parties are correct to make promises of that kind. But I think all of us had the provincial chair here, Comrade Sittler, saying that we shouldn't make promises, but we must make commitments. And I think in that sense he is correct. To start with the economic one, the fact of the matter is that the promises we all make to build roads and schools and end the bucket system and create jobs and requires resources. In a situation, as I was saying at the beginning, in which we have an economy that's in crisis, those jobs will not come if we don't attend to that economy. And the promises that all of us as parties make about all of the good things that we're going to do will not happen if we don't have the money to do that. And so let me read a commitment which the ANC makes in that regard. I'm sure you'll have seen this in the manifesto of the ANC. And it says, we must urgently finalize the social compact between the social partners to achieve our country's fundamental social transformation, to reduce and eradicate the plague of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. We must urgently finalize that social compact to produce those outcomes. I'd like to believe that this is not a promise but a commitment. And the reason I say this is because I think all of us in the room here have clearly must have followed the developments in our country, certainly since the beginning of the year, the beginning of last year, with regard to these particular issues. Because part of what happened, which I thought was very, very positive, was that as a result of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think for the first time since 1994, we had what this document talks about the social partners, the manifesto of the ANC talks about. They began to speak with one voice about one thing, to say it was critically important that as social partners we must get together, elaborate an economic program, reconstruction and recovery program, which will be binding on all of us to address these issues: unemployment, poverty, inequality. You had business saying that, you had government saying that, you had labor saying that, you had civil society saying that. Especially prompted by the impact of that pandemic, which was highlighting all of these faults, the structural faults in our society. I would like to believe that all of you would then have seen that in September last year, the government presidency, issued a statement to say, indeed, the social partners had got together and agreed on a common statement in terms of what needs to happen with regard to this economy. So when I listened to that, I was watching the government, President Ramaphosa saying that, and I stood up at home and gave him a standing ovation. That at last, the first time since 1994, very, very first time since 94, that the social partners now in 2020 came together and said, this is what we're going to do together in order to address these fundamental problems. I thought they were making a commitment, not making a promise. Now, what happened last year, and particularly as an expression of that process, you recall that President Ramaphosa convened a joint sitting of Parliament in October last year, where he introduced to Parliament and the country the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, and said, here is the plan of government in pursuit of this notion of the social compact to produce this common outcome. And indeed he said, as he introduced that Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, that it was a product of the decisions, discussions that had taken place in NEDLEC among the social partners. I hope everybody has seen that plan. What it says and what it thinks, what it proposes are the principal issues that needed to be attended to in order to achieve this economy that it visualized. So I shan't talk about that because that would take a lot of time. But interestingly, that was in October last year. Interestingly, in July last year, this one of the social partners, that is business, had also produced, what's happening to the volume is becoming too much. Business had produced their own economic recovery strategy. The government plan, the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Plan, which President Ramaphosa introduced to Parliament, on the government website, if you look at it, it's probably about 35 pages. The business plan, which is Economic Recovery Plan of July 2020, if you look at it on the internet, it's about 120, 130 pages. Suppose my leader sitting behind me here will remember that when we discussed these documents in a meeting of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, I said, it seemed to me that what we had here in these two documents was a vision, a very good vision. Where do we want to go and what buttons should we touch in order to get this country's economy where we want it to be? It's what President Ramaphosa did, quite correctly. This is the vision. And what business did was to give the detail which would give practical meaning to that vision. So I said at that meeting, if you just look at the length of these two documents, 130 pages, correctly vision, another 130 pages, more of a plan. President Ramaphosa, I remember, spoke last in that discussion. And he said, Comrade Thabo is correct. The business did submit their economic recovery strategy. What is wrong about is the length. It was not 130 pages, it's 1,000 pages. So this is the virtual meetings. So I'm sitting at home participating. So again, Comrade Mshengo, I stood up and cheered. Because 1,000 pages meant a lot of work had gone into this thing. To translate what is a lovely vision into something practical, something that can be done and must be done. So what I'm saying is that this notion that is referred to in the manifesto of the ANC, this social compact, which must produce this plan to eradicate the plague of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. In fact, some practical steps have been taken in that regard. What is outstanding? What is outstanding is that the social partners must get together to say, we've got a common vision of where we want to go. Some detailed work has happened to translate that vision into a plan. Let us work on that basis to look at it in all respects, so that at the end of the day, we actually have a plan which can be implemented. That's what is missing. And, this is very, very important. Let me mention one figure. The business strategy. It says this is what we need to do, many things. And then makes a very, very interesting commitment. And it says, we, the business people, the business sector, commit that if we implement this plan over a period of 3 years, we will invest, the private sector, 1 trillion rand in the South African economy in 3 years. This is there's a cell phone there that is also talking. This is the very, very first time, again I'm saying, since 1994, that you have a collective voice coming from the private sector making a commitment of that kind. It's 1 trillion rand over a period of 3 years. And they actually even explain where the money will come from. I have got a lot of confidence in these two leaders of mine behind me. But I wouldn't ask them to come and spell out 1 trillion. I don't know. That's a lot of money, but it's an extraordinary commitment. I'm saying it's for the very first time since 94. Of course, that plan, the business one, says over that 3 years, the public sector, government, parastatals and so on, must invest 2.4 trillion rand. So they are proposing that over the next 3 years, the 3 years of that particular plan, there should be invested in the South African economy 3.4 trillion rand. We haven't had that kind of investment in this economy over a short period of that kind. it explains where the public sector would get that money from. And indeed says, if we do it like this and that, over that 3 years, we will increase 1.4 million new jobs. I'm mentioning this thing, colleagues, to say what I read from the ANC manifesto, that we must urgently finalize the social compact between the social partners to achieve our country's fundamental social transformation, to reduce and eradicate the plague of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, is a commitment. And personally, I would like that all of us, and South Africans, should really take up this matter with the ANC. Local government elections will take place on Monday. And then from Tuesday, we must go back to them to say, this is what you promised in your manifesto. And it's not about an ANC victory. It's about rescuing the country from this enormous crisis of poverty and all these things it says, and unemployment, inequality, etc. And I think we must, all of us, take it on board as one of our tasks as South Africans to insist that this must happen. The social partners have already produced, more or less, a vision and a plan to address this critical matter. So I think that's one important issue. You will have seen that the ANC, in the process of selecting its candidate councillors this year, it took a correct decision, I think, to ask the communities to help. Say, communities, please, can you help us? Who among us do you think would be the right person, whom you trust, you got confidence in them that they will, etc. And indeed, in many instances, this is what happened. There are some 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, 10 other instances where things didn't go quite right. But I think that's a minority of instances. So it was a positive thing. But I think that is half of the story. The other half of that story is that the reason that became important is because the structures of the ANC at that branch level became too weak to be relied upon to produce the kind of candidate that is needed. Where you have an ANC branch that is not working with the people, it's not active, it's not engaging the people, and it's not helping them to, etc. Of course, in the end, that ANC branch will not be able to tell you accurately who's the best candidate for this branch. So the communities come to the rescue to say, okay, branch, let us help you to tell you who we think among yourselves is the best one. That's an important issue because the comrade, the provincial chair, mentioned this thing. He talked about renewal, the renewal of the ANC. This relates to that matter. So where the ANC promises us better leadership at the local government level, it arises out of that commitment of renewal. Comrade Program Director, I hope I'm not going to speak too long. Since I've got, I can quote these things here. A statement that is made by Nelson Mandela, President of the African National Congress, in 1997, at the National Conference of the ANC then. And he says, I'm not quoting him directly, but this is what he means. He says that the ANC is changing in a negative direction. Because since we joined government, there are people who are joining the ANC not because they believe in ANC policies or its values or anything like that, because it's a route to power and the abuse of power for self-enrichment. That was in 1997. Nelson Mandela's, it's called a political report to the National Conference of the ANC that year. That message has been repeated by the ANC since then. Up to the last national conference in 2017. Same message. Over a period of 20 years. And the reason for that is because in truth, we in the leadership of the ANC did not know how to deal with this problem. Nelson Mandela said then, we must take steps to make sure that we keep these people, this kind of person, out of the ANC. These are not ANC people. Let's keep them out, otherwise the ANC is going to die from inside. But the problem is Thabo Mbeki comes to Sihles Kalala here and says, I love the ANC. Viva ANC, viva. And I also add, viva Sihle, viva. Yeah. And I recite the Freedom Charter, and I even demonstrate to him how much I can toy. And Sihle will say, what a good comrade. He has no other way, he can't reach any other conclusion except that. What he does not know is that I'm one of these people that Mandela spoke about, who's joining because this is a governing party and is giving me the possibility to, in the end, self-enrichment. Now, colleagues, you can imagine what happens. I'm saying we failed to deal with this problem. What happens? The numbers accumulate in this ANC. If year number 1, there were 10, and next year they're drawn by another 10, it's now 20. They accumulate, and it's bound to impact on the quality of the organization. So in the end, the ANC says, National Conference, there must be a process of renewal. There has to, indeed, the resolution at the 2017 National Conference, it says there must be this renewal. Otherwise, it becomes a matter of life and death for the organization. I'm saying all of these things, colleagues, to say, where we're going to fight corruption, we are going to improve governance, and we apologize for all the wrong things that they've done in the past. It must be on the basis of something. What Sihles Kalala was saying, this must not be a promise, it must be a commitment. And what makes it a commitment is that I think the ANC has understood that even if it wants to survive itself, it has to renew itself. You read those resolutions of the last national conference. We talked, it says the ANC is losing respect. Its capacity to lead the country is disappearing. I'm saying these matters about governance, about fights against corruption, to translate from a promise into a commitment must mean a commitment to do this renewal, which is mandated, authorized, demanded by the National Conference of the ANC. So, and I'm quite sure that the ANC must show that publicly, that it is actually renewing itself. It owes itself to itself because that's the resolution it adopted, but it owes it to itself in order to survive. But that is what, that renewal is what will give the country the kind of persons that are required in the system of governance. The sort of people who don't stand to be candidate for this and that and the other in order to steal, but really, genuinely, seriously to stand because I want to serve the interests of the people. I'm saying that I think that there are commitments that have been made by the ANC, even outside of the local government elections. And I think as a country we owe it to ourselves as a country to say, you ANC people must attend to this. National government is predominantly ANC, provincial government is predominantly ANC, local government predominantly ANC. And if the ANC does not correct itself in that context, then at all of these levels we're in trouble. The country is in trouble. The last point the Community Program Director must make is we also need to look at the system of local government. I think there might be people who are more and more educated about this than I am, but I think we've got something like 278 or thereabouts municipalities. The majority of which, 225, 200, somewhere there, are local municipalities. Then 44 are district municipalities and 8 are metros. I mention that because you will have seen that government has been talking a lot about a district development model. The point also is raised in the ANC manifesto. And the President Ramaphosa says in that manifesto that let us bring the district development model to life to ensure better planning, coordination, and monitoring at local and district level. Because in terms of what he's saying here, that better planning, coordination, and monitoring and so on, the local municipalities are too small. You need these larger units. You need these larger units, and there's a long argument that one can have about this. We need to approach the matter about our system of local government in a more rational and intelligent way. Take this metro, Tegwin. A year ago, 2 years ago, in terms of the capital budget of this metro, something like 43% of the capital budget for the Tegwin metro came from own resources. is resources generated by the municipality itself from rates, from taxes, from whatever. 43%. That's his metro. Then take the Tambo district in the Eastern Cape. Same year, same period, the amount of money for capital investment generated from local resources was 1%. You see the difference? 43 here in this metro and 1% in that district. You can't conceivably think that Tambo district is going to develop. It can't. So what are we going to do about it? In terms even of the financing of the system of local government, it can be the same. There's a proposal, for instance, that's been made, which I think is correct, that the Development Bank of Southern Africa, is one of the major, apart from capital transfers from the national budget, one of the biggest financiers of local government is the DBSA. And the DBSA is also involved in funding the metros. And the suggestion I'm saying I think is correct is, why don't we get the DBSA to concentrate on these districts which cannot raise the funds themselves? eThekwini can do something to raise funds, to issue municipal bonds. Issue municipal bonds, and people subscribe to those bonds, and so the municipality has got more money for development. Only Tambo district cannot issue a single municipal bond. Nobody will buy it. So why don't we then get the metros to do something to take care of themselves, which they can, and let's use these resources from the DBSA to these municipalities which can't survive on their own. I'm just giving that as an example of the manner in which we need to look at local government to say, how is it functioning? What is it that we do to make rationally, to make sure that it functions properly? So in the end, colleagues, what I'm just making 3 points. We need more resources in order to finance the development that is desperately needed in our local communities. Whether it's doing away with the bucket system or whatever, needs resources. And any of our parties that just comes to say, I promise you the following, and not address that matter, then they are not telling the truth. We've got to say, what is it that we do in order to make sure those resources are generated? I'm saying we are trying to answer that question. This challenge to get the social partners together is very critical to that. I'm saying a commitment has been made. Let even the ANC, I'm saying the ANC, even in terms of its own renewal, never mind being re-elected, it has to ensure that it renews itself, otherwise it will die. That's why it took the decisions that it took. And precisely because local government is face to face with the people, we've got to make sure that this local government actually functions properly. Yeah. I used to be, let it say this, that I used to be President of the Republic many years ago. Indeed, as a President of the Republic, I could, if I'd wanted, we are in this province. Knock at Sihle's door, or maybe no, Sihle is not there. No, knock at Sihle's door, the provincial chair, and say, you know, we were at that meeting at the ICC, and you people made a commitment about the economy, about the quality of the political leadership in the municipalities, and the quality of the professionals, municipalities that are going to be there, and that will no longer allow us to be governed by people who don't have our interests at heart. You promised us all of those things. I'm saying come to him on Tuesday, on the 2nd of November, and say, please, can we see the results? I think we need that. You know, I said last week, and people were saying that I'm talking nonsense. That's why they were too big to fail. You can't allow that to then affect the entire financial system. The country will become ungovernable. That's why I'm saying it's too big to fail. So the ANC owes us as the population of South Africa some obligations. It can't sit in these dominant positions in the country and fail to address practically these various matters. Where are the resources to create new jobs? Where are the people who are going to lead clean government and so on? And that's why I'm saying that I think it's our common national challenge to come to the ANC on the 2nd of November to say, you promised us the following things. Let's see what you are doing about them. Because, colleagues, just before I sit down, we're here in this particular metro, which went to a very terrible time in July. People who had a particular political agenda. Targeting the government, not provincial government. And one of the outcomes they would have wanted So I keep saying to people that, so many people got killed here. The people who are responsible for that thing, I would not have been surprised if they were involved in ensuring that that killing does take place. There is President Ramaphosa appointed a judicial commission of inquiry into the South African Revenue Service. You remember that commission was chaired by Judge Nugent. And one of the extraordinary things, in my view, that happens in countries is that nobody talks about that commission of inquiry in the country. We all talk about, quite correctly, about the commission into state capture, which indeed we must talk about that. But I'm saying we must also talk about this one. And the reason for it is because you had an extraordinary example of a process put in place deliberately to destroy the South African Revenue Service. I'm talking about a revenue service which accounts for 98% of state revenues. What Judge Nugent details is a deliberate process to destroy that institution. If it had succeeded, a democratic South Africa would collapse. So we have got to ask ourselves this question. Who is this person who would take it upon themselves consciously to say the South African Revenue Service must be destroyed? The reason that commission was appointed is because that process of destruction was succeeding. And that is why you saw from year after year, the revenues that SARS was collecting were declining. And people are saying, no, but what has happened to SARS? It was so efficient. And that was the commission, that's why it was established. And indeed established exactly this point, that because of the process of the destruction of SARS, that's why the revenues were falling. I'm saying that we must not ignore this element. There are some people in our society who do not want this democracy to succeed. And one of the things they will do is to make sure that we fight among ourselves I think let so that we fish our country out of its crisis. But thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, President Thabo Mbeki. Let's give President Mbeki a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Before I allow hands that may want to comment and to raise certain questions that would need to be answered, let me first and foremost apologize that we have excluded some of the sectors that are here because the list at that time was not with me. So I do want to acknowledge the presence among us of the South African Hindu Mahaya Sabha leadership that is here, or delegation. Secondly, to recognize lady here will be number 5. I'm also being told there's a hand at the back. Number 7. Behind you will be number 8. You will be number 9. I think I've not left out anybody. Now I want to put a rule that nobody should be, everybody must refuse to be provoked by other people. So we agree that we provoke 9 hands, and then they represent the comments and proposals or questions that are to be made here. So as I said, strictly 3 minutes, and the 3 minutes will be counted by myself, not the speaker, on the podium. So the moment you stand up and the mic is coming to you, I'm counting. So you say your name and the surname, and then you make the point that you want to make. Thank you very much. So I'm going to stand here so that I bring a bit of intimidation to those who are speaking. Yeah, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Director. My name is Thabo Mbeki. I'm part of the delegation from the SABC region team. I will ask a question on the ANC commitment in fighting corruption. Recently, whenever the ANC is taking action against leaders or members who are alleged to be involved in corruption, the ANC is always blamed of using state organs to fight infectional deaths. In public platforms, we've heard some of the ANC leaders making statements that our justice system has never been independent. During Mandela's era, there was interference. During Thabo Mbeki's era, there was interference. As well, during Cyril Ramaphosa's era, there's interference. Comrade President, don't you think that such utterances might affect the ANC commitment in fighting corruption? Because when the ANC taking action is being blamed of interference or using state organs to fight its fictional battles. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to number 2 on my far left. Yes, you can proceed.
Good evening. I have 2, let's say, comments or questions to you, Comrade President. The first one concerning the monitoring and evaluation, especially when it comes to local government. When I read the ANC manifesto, the only line that was there that sort of links to that is that of choosing the best people to run the municipality. Now, my question was, what then does the ANC do to check those people that have been deployed, whether they're doing the job or not? Why are we only limiting the interviews of whether people are capable of running the municipalities to mayors? Why don't we include PR councillors? Because at the end of the day, you need someone who's going to be able to evaluate the document submitted by the municipality to check whether it does really comply. Someone who's going to be able to ask important questions when it comes to corruption and other matters where people are not really doing their job. So my question would be, shouldn't we really extend this issue or even have a separate standing matter dealing with monitoring and evaluation in our manifesto? Maybe we can do that the next time we're developing the manifesto. The second one is regards to municipal funding that we touched on a bit. You perfectly said it, that the financing is from downwards up, which is very frustrating from a person who's a dedicated taxpayer, because they pay their taxes and yet they still have to dodge potholes, suffer from, let's say in other areas, sanitation, which is not really good. I will not mention the issue of electricity, which is causing serious problems, especially within municipalities. Isn't that a time in which we should reevaluate whether do we really need the middle strata of the middle sector of our government, in this case provincial? Why don't we take the money given to provincial departments, to municipalities, since it is the municipalities which are in the direct interface of the people? If I suffer downstairs within the municipal area and I'm not getting the services which I'm supposed to get, even my allegiance and making sure that I work for this municipality is a bit of a problem. And finally, the introduction of private PPPs in terms of saying in the economic development strategy, why don't we include the people that are going to be down there, put them under our wings, give them some of the responsibilities in which we're supposed to do as municipalities. In that case, you have skilled individuals which are able to take over at a later stage. People are able to make a living because you employ them at the end of the day. So it is a win-win situation for everyone. Instead of sitting and wait for the municipality to award a tender so that particular service is rendered. And a number of the times we find that the people that are employed don't even come from the same municipality. So the money is extracted from municipalities and goes somewhere else. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I was quite right with the 3 minutes. Nobody has gone beyond that. Let's go to the third speaker. It's the lady this side, just in front of me. Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Jamakas Jadu, by the way, Sihle. This is Dr. Bikicha from the South African Medical Association. I'm going to be very brief. I think I just want to touch on two things. It's more of a commentary. I think the last 2 years should have shown us the need to actually realize health as a constitutional right for South Africans. I say this in discussing the economy because without a healthy nation, you don't have people that can meaningfully contribute to the economy of the country. You then have an economy that is dependent on your indigents, on your grant receivers, and child-headed households. So something needs to happen to make health a reality. It needs to stop being a budget item. It needs to something that we make happen as the ANC. There is something else. I fight with my colleagues all the time, and I think this is something that we need to look at as the ANC. I know it's quite controversial right now, but what are we doing to harness the intellect of the professionals that exist within us? They come and they comment from the outside and can critique and tell you where you are going wrong. But nowhere do they come inside the house and use their skills to advance the ANC. Somewhere along the line, we need to discuss this thing. I know it's controversial, this Professionals League of the ANC, because we're seen to be creating an intelligentsia or elite. But somewhere we need to harness our own professionals and their intellect to develop this country, to develop the ANC, so that the policies and what actually needs to happen to make South Africa work comes from within. And we leave this thing of being, I want to call us armchair critics, but somewhere along the line we need to bring them back.
Thank you very much. Let's go to number 4. Where was number 4? Yeah, right there. Thanks.
No, thanks, Program Director. My name is Kumbuzo Mdlalose, the Provincial Chairperson of COSATU. I think we must welcome the address by the former President. Very informative and focused on the issues that affect local government and our economy. Especially when we are to, as we have received the proposal that there should be a reorientation of the financial resources to the struggling municipalities. He made an example with OR Tambo vis-a-vis the metros, who are generating more money than rural municipalities, because district municipalities are located in the most rural areas, wherein the question of unemployment, poverty and inequality is of highest levels. So I think that proposal needs to be further engaged and be problematized in our discussions and look into it as to whether we are not going to assist our municipalities. The second point that I was also impressed about is the point on the deployment of cadres in the municipalities that are actually linked with the vision of our movement, especially in the context when we speak about cadre deployment, we must have actually developed those cadres. It's a point of emphasis in that area that cadre deployment must be on the basis of cadre development, because where are you going to get those cadres if you have not developed them? Hence, we are facing with these problems of corruption, problems of retrenchment of workers unscrupulously in other municipalities, because we will lack the question of dealing with labor peace and ensuring that the workforce is able to achieve and deliver. Lastly, I think on the question of the economy, I think the former president was correct, but we must also be able to diagnose that our economic problems are structural and systematic. They are not ad hoc. They date back since the advent of the 1996 Class Project, where our economy was more dependent on the external forces, wherein the question of the industrial policy action plan was introduced but not implemented. I think 3 administrations adopted the IPAP, the Industrial Policy Action Plan, but it has not been implemented. I think our economic policy orientation
You are the first one.
needs
Past 3 minutes.
to look into that question. Thanks. As I'm finishing, Chair. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to be loyal to the commitment of 3 minutes. Because then I may be tested from here if we would be able to do these things outside. Can we move on to the next speaker? It was number 5 here, right next to me, I think. Then I'll go that side for 6 and 7, so as 8 and 9. Thank you.
I would like to greet the President and Usihlalo, Comrade Sihle, Nobala, and all protocol observed. I'm Nomo Sambata, the Provincial Secretary of the Progressive Professionals Forum. I think, Nobala, I've been mostly covered by other colleagues. But what has not been covered even by the presentation of the President, which I think is key and critical for us to realize this economic recovery plan that we are talking about. We have seen the devastating effects of COVID-19 in both areas of where our poor people stay, as well as in schools, where inequality has been obvious. I'm saying inequality has been obvious there, especially in education sector, because some schools have been faring well. They didn't feel the heat of COVID-19 because they were connected. But there are schools which don't know what are we talking about when we talk about connectivity, Zoom, you name all the platforms that have been used by other schools to continue work as normal. Now, the gap that has happened from the onset of COVID-19 to today, it's going to be realized when these learners reach higher education. because even if they can be assisted to pass their matric, they are going to be having a background issues because of the curriculum that was not achieved the way it was supposed to be. Now my question is, what are we going to do to bridge that gap? If we continue to ignore that part of inequality in the education system, we are taking our country back. Again, when they reach higher education, are we ready to face the future post-fourth industrial revolution? Because when we look at the modules which are offered in higher education, they are really, most of them, not talking to what industry wants. They are not talking to what business wants to be able to recover the economy and to take South Africa forward. So, Comrade, former President, that is really my worry. If we want to see even change at local government, even change in all spheres of government, I think we need to start being serious and re-looking.
My word is that you are 3 minutes and a few seconds now. So please wrap up.
But yeah, the education sector, Comrade President, for me is key. For us to even get those councillors who are going to be fit for purpose to run local government. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we, I think we're proceeding to that side. It's the gentleman there. No, this one. Yeah, yes. Kambe, you were number one?
7.
7.
Yes.
Yeah, now I'm left with 8 and 9.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nopala, Comrade Mpemba. Protocol observed, NEC leadership, provincial leadership, and all the progressive formations gathered here. Former President Mbeki, my one is to engage further on the issue of poverty.
Kambe, did you say, introduce us, I think we forgot.
My apologies. My name is Mbusiswa Ngobo. Thank you, Nopala. My one is to expand a bit on the issue of poverty alleviation based on lived experiences and what we observe, particularly centered around how municipalities are functioning. It's 4 points, and I think core to that in expanding on dealing with poverty, we need investor-friendly municipalities. And why I say investor-friendly municipalities is municipalities will sit on projects for 4, 5, 6, 7 years on end without carrying through in some of the investor commitments that get made. And as part of this conversation, one does then hope that there is a commitment around investor friendliness. And I think we can build on that in ensuring that councils that get appointed post this election process do get orientation around promoting investments and prioritizing investments that create jobs in communities and deal with the problem of poverty alleviation. I'll go up a layer, Comrade President, in terms of your point on resource constraints or resource challenges in terms of the fiscus in finding the money to do some of these programs. It's glaring that we do have a fiscal leakage in our national fiscus. A simple and quick example would be if you examine medical aids as an example. I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, they were saying they've got surpluses of 40 billion rands. That's on medical aids in a society that's got so many challenges in terms of healthcare. So that's a fiscal leakage that cascades resources into certain class and sector of society. Let me rather leave it at that point just to highlight that rather than expanding further. But it's clear we've got a fiscal leakage that we need to address so that there's a greater spread of resources in dealing with central again to the issues of poverty so that we deal with healthcare. Comrade President, I do agree that the ANC is too big to fail. And it's really based...
Please make that as your last point. You're above 3 minutes already.
Thank you. And it's really based on the ANC's branch network and how it can assist in developing communities and how it's quick to reach communities. And on that basis alone, I want to support that narrative that the ANC is too big to fail and it needs to be assisted in dealing with some of its failures. Lastly,
please,
no, Bala.
As a program director, I'm also too responsible to fail, please.
Yes, thank you. In closing, we need to promote the culture of entrepreneurship within black communities, and it's through localization. Thank you very much, Nobala.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go to number 8.
Greetings, former President. I'm Boniseni Mbata in Athene, working at the Master of the High Court in the Division of KwaZulu-Natal. My question is centered around the political education within the ANC. How does the ANC broaden the scope of political education to ensure that a person who joins the ANC understands the basic fundamental principles of the ANC, vis-a-vis a person who just joined for the largesse and the material gains, to avoid these factional battles that are crippling the organization? You find a person that becomes a member of an individual within the organization. Because he loves this person, whatever he say or do, he'll just follow in and fail to understand why was the ANC formed and what does the ANC stands for. So how does the ANC broaden the scope of the political education to say a person who joins, maybe like in a place of employment, he goes to a process of 3 months to 6 months or even write an assessment to ensure that this person knows what does the ANC stands for. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to my last speaker. Yeah. No. I think it's yes, it's you. And then there was somebody there. Yeah. So you are one before the last.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Andy Lemkunu, the Provincial Organizer of the ANC Youth League. Greetings, comrade leadership, and greetings to President and the House. One, I want to make a few comments on what Comrade President has said. One, I wish to speak about the renewal of the ANC first. Comrade TM, maybe before we even move, I wish to start by saying, what is it that went wrong? Because the reality is that when the organization degenerated, there were a lot of things that happened. And it continued to happen to an extent that some people who recruited in the movement even thought those things are cultures and norms of the organization. I would want to make an example here in KwaZulu-Natal. How are we going to know that the ANC is the IFP in this province? Look, because in 2004, when we took over the province, we recruited many people from the IFP to join the ANC in the province. And we did not do justice to the organization by teaching them politics of the ANC. We decided to put them in our own pocket. That has led us to what we are here for now, Comrade President. And again, Comrade President, I want to disagree by saying it is good that the ANC has outsourced its own process of electing leaders to the community. It is not correct, because on its own, it questions the state of our organization. Because one day you will wake up and say, let us convene a national conference of the ANC and invite the whole South Africans to participate in electing the leader of the ANC one day. I think it is not correct. We need to go back and look at those things, Comrade President. And another thing, Comrade President, I fully agree with you when you speak about skilled leaders in our municipalities. You know what usually happened, and we must get rid of these things. The term of councillors is coming to an end very soon. People who have been councillors will want to have posters in municipalities, create these posters. Then you'll have someone with a teacher's diploma being given a senior management position to manage engineers. How are we going to manage engineers with a teacher's diploma? It will lead for our municipalities to collapse. It will come to an end, regardless. Comrade President, we must do those things. Lastly, we so wish our government, Comrade President, must allow us, Comrade Sihle, to allow the youth league to participate in the mainstream economy of this country. We so wish we will be included in this economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let them go to the last speaker at the back there. Yes.
Greetings, Program Director, the President, and the ANC leadership. Mr. President, print on transformation of the economic sector.
Please don't forget to say who you are, your name and the surname. It makes it easier when we take notes. Yeah.
Sorry, Nobala, it's Mahmoud Omar from Msunduzi. I'm a PR councillor at Moses Mabhida region. Mr. President, since your economic blueprint on transformation of the economic sector, which still remains a lodestar in our economy and development as a country, what is the ANC's economic position with regards to our economic recovery? Point 2, what has happened to the African dream that you well espoused and articulated as a president? What has happened to the vision as it remains your brainchild? Does it mean that when you left, you took it with you? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me now, firstly, I'm going to invite the provincial chair of the ANC so that he can pick up one or two questions that he would like to answer. And then after that, we invite former President Mbeki. Let me remove my COVID here.
Thanks, and once again, let me join the comrades and colleagues who have appreciated the input by President Mbeki. I'm not going to engage on a lot of questions, just to, I think I'll deal with 3 issues. The first, by Mpumelelo Zigalala. And I will pick one question there, linked to the financial model suggested by former president. Then Pumelelo suggests that shouldn't we consider 2 spheres of government? And I think the question is correct. From where I stand, what is the position of the ANC is that government must establish the commission that will review provinces, whether we need provinces. If we need them, do we need them structured as they are or not? So that is a work in progress. But the view of the ANC, just from the unbanning to negotiations, was that of having a central government and strong local government system. And therefore, we may need to revisit that issue going forward to policy review or policy conferences. And I will leave it at that level. Dr. Pigisha, I think I must say I agree fully with you. We must tap and harness the skills and intellect of professionals in various sectors. And I think that's why we've got PPF in the ANC, the Progressive Professionals Forum. And for us in KwaZulu-Natal, and I know that even the Secretary can confirm, structures of the PPF interact with the ANC. And some are even part of subcommittees of the ANC. And through that organic relationship, we're able to harness that. And we are able to harness skills even in government. And there is synergy. Whether you talk of our Provincial Planning Commission or you talk of the eThekwini Planning Commission, its composition will tell you that we try to maximize and harness the skills and intellect of our professionals, even if you talk of the state entities in the province. Now, the question that made me to come and respond was a direct one, and is the last question from Andile. Young people must be encouraged to become entrepreneurs, not just otatabeka, not just to deliver or to do this, even to participate in entrepreneurial skills. And that's why we encourage the 3 programs in KwaZulu-Natal. The first program is that of the Black Industrialist. And that program is led by the KZN Growth Fund together with the National Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And I think young people can benefit in that Black Industrialist. But secondly, KwaZulu-Natal was the first to launch a dedicated fund that support young entrepreneurs. And it supported, in the first year, it supported not less than 53 entities owned by young people. And therefore, we must encourage young people to enter into the mainstream economy through those channels. But lastly, our effort in supporting SMMEs in general through Operation Vula is not confined only on those who are above 35 years. Number of young people have equally benefited in the Operation Vula Fund. I know of the youth that I saw benefiting called iToppers from Josini. I saw them, and I know when they were established, those young people were led by very vibrant youth. Vibrant, not political, but just activism on entrepreneurship. So it's important that young people should participate in the mainstream economy, and the government have opened platforms and opportunities for the youth and women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just indicate before I allow President Mbeki to come back, somebody has lost a bank card. So it has also a secret pin written at the back. So please see me, because if I live with it, you can almost imagine how dangerous is that. President Mbeki.
M2, it's pensioners who need money. Give that card to me. Before I try and deal with these questions very quickly, let me make an appeal. I mentioned two documents which are publicly available. That's a government document on economic recovery, economic reconstruction and recovery. It's on the internet, it's very easy to find. The second one is the business one, done by Business for South Africa, on the economic recovery strategy. And the recommendation I want to make is that can all of us try as much as we can to download those documents and have a look at them. Because I'm saying that in order to encourage us to engage those documents and therefore to participate in this process of imagining a new South Africa, a changed South Africa. And we'll find that it actually enables us to intervene in a number of areas that have been raised during now, as colleagues were posing questions. For instance, one of the provisions there is that in terms of that plan that will come out of the social compact, is that we must build a capable state. Otherwise, these plans that we have, economic plans, are not going to work. A capable state. Now, even the matter that is raised by our comrade, Provincial Chair, Comrade Sishle, is responding correctly on the matter about the provincial government. They need to have a look. It arises even in that context. When we say a capable state, therefore capable of contributing to this process of the economic reconstruction and recovery of our country, what state is that? What role do the provinces play? What role do, and etc. So I'm saying that we can then make an input into that process. In this way, I'm quite certain, for instance, if we talk about the intelligentsia in this province, Comrade Sishle talked about just now, the professionals and so on, there's nothing that is an obstruction that prohibits that intelligentsia in this province to get together to say, we've got some ideas to contribute to the process of this economic reconstruction and recovery. We're going to sit together and put down our own ideas as to what we think should happen. And come and give that document to Mduye, who will be in the office, so that it gets fed into the national process of this discussion. I'm saying we can intervene in these matters. But I'm saying really, let's have a look at those two documents. They would help us to determine what is it that we can do to be part of that process. And just not merely delegate it to somebody else is going to do it. But we ourselves must say we want to be effectively part of that process, and there is a way in which that can happen. Maybe just to illustrate that particular point. I mean, as a foundation, we are an NGO, a non-governmental organization. But we're very, very concerned about this matter about these social partners don't seem to be acting together. And so, instead of sitting and complaining and so on, we said, well, let's meet all of them. So indeed, we've done that. We've met with the business, we've met with labor, we've met with COSATU and all the others. met with civil society, met with government, to say, what are we doing about these things? So it is possible to engage these processes so that I'm saying that would help to answer even some of the questions that have been posed here. The first question was about corruption, the fight against corruption. Allegations made about the abuse of state organs and so on. It's absolutely obvious. The ANC, I'm saying that even for its own survival, has genuinely, seriously to fight this corruption. I think we've seen this thing for some time now, that when I get caught doing something wrong, it's very easy for me to say, this is political victimization. It's a cover. We must expect that these people who are, in order to defend themselves, will make these allegations about abuse of state organs and all of that. I don't think the ANC must be deterred from that. You remember that one judge sitting in the High Court in this province said we're still in government, had interfered with one particular case of political interference and so on. A judge of the KZN High Court said, yes, this is what happened. And the matter went to the Supreme Court of Appeal, who issued a very scathing judgment to say, but where does this judge get that from? Not a single piece of evidence was ever produced to justify this statement. But I'm saying that we must expect that if you come for me tomorrow, the first thing I'm going to say is abuse of state power. I don't think that should be a deterrence. I think also we need to have some respect for the people who sit in our judiciary and so on, including the prosecutors. I don't think they are that easy to influence and therefore lose their independence. But I'm saying that in many instances, people who are doing wrong things, in order to avoid that matter being acted upon, will use this argument of abuse of state organs and so on. But the ANC should not be deterred by that kind of argument. Comrade Sihle has dealt with this matter which was raised, what do we do about, do we need provincial government and so on. I agree entirely with the point he was making, that needs a review. It's part of this process I was saying earlier of when we say a capable state, what do we mean? But I think what Sihle was saying is quite correct. The monitoring and evaluation system, which it's an old decision by government, that system, and you have a monitoring and evaluation structure in the office of the president, that thing needs to cascade downwards through all three spheres of government. Because indeed you are quite correct that once you say we need to sort out this political leadership of municipalities and the professional technical leadership, you've got to monitor that that's happening. You can't say since we've elected these people, therefore necessarily it'll happen. But I'm saying the decision has always been that system of monitoring and evaluation will escalate downwards. I hope that's what would happen. I agree entirely about the issue of health. Priority, yes. And indeed, I think in the context of this discussion of the national health insurance issue, it's been particular so that in that context, we must discuss this matter. Where does health belong in the totality of all of this? But I agree entirely. And again, I think if you looked at these two documents I'm talking about, which are about generating wealth and how to use that wealth for what purpose. In this matter, you'll find that it features within that context. But the thing is correct. The focus on health. As is the matter, again, as Comrade Sisla said, the matter of harnessing our intelligentsia in a very systematic and correct way. And that is absolutely critical. I've had a complaint about this thing for many years, that in fact our intelligentsia in many instances has taken itself out of this process of social engagement about the transformation of the country. They stand aside there and they are observing and might want to say that we are the watchdogs or something. But it's absolutely vital that indeed our intelligentsia needs to engage in all of its echelons, needs to engage this matter about what's happening to our country. Somebody raised a question about education. Again, a very, very important observations with regard to that. It was raised in the context, for instance, of this digital divide, impact of COVID-19 pandemic, inequality, and so on. But this side, the education sector, is one of the sectors that needs very, very, very serious discussion by this intelligentsia we're talking about, to engage this matter of education in its totality. Is this the educational system that we want? Is it producing the right results? You have lots and lots of young people, fortunately, who are now getting access to university education. NSFAS funds increasing, and in all this is a very good thing to improve that access. But what are these young people learning at universities? I used to be Comrade Mdu, I used to be a chancellor of a teacher training college many, many years ago. I don't know why I agreed to do that, but I was. So I go to the teacher training college to hand out certificates at the end of the academic year. At the end of it, I speak to the principal and I say to him, why are we getting so many distinctions in biblical studies? Too many. So he said to me, you see, he gave me a little bit of history about the metric examinations over the years. That this subject was introduced at some point as a matric subject, biblical studies. And so young people at high school take it because it's relatively easy. So he says, then they come out of high school, come to teacher training, they've already got a distinction in biblical studies. They continue here and get distinction in biblical studies, teacher training. They go back as teachers to teach biblical studies. So what do you do about that? I'm saying that let's look at our educational system. The schools, are they producing children who've got necessary qualifications to be able to cope with university studies? The dropout rates are too high in our education from the beginning. There are too many young people who drop out as you go up and up and up. There's something wrong there. But our intelligentsia needs to get together and say, what do we do about our educational system? That would then include the matter that has been raised correctly about this digital divide, the inequality in education. We've got here the CEO of our foundation. He has started a program of introducing digital technology to primary schools. Somebody talked about the fourth industrial revolution here. And that's exactly the point, that children at that age of 6, 7, 8, you must give them tablets so that as they grow up, they are already exposed to these digital means. You prepare them to be able to interact with that fourth industrial revolution. And fortunately, we are working with the Department of Basic Education on that to introduce these means. But that's an NGO intervention, but it's something that we need to make general. But that requires resources as well. But I'm saying that, yes, indeed, we have to attend to this thing in a very systematic way. The points that were made about the role of local government in poverty alleviation, the need for it to be investor-friendly, cultivation of a culture of entrepreneurship and all of that, issues about fiscal leakage, all of them very correct. This is the reason why there's this focus on this district development, it's because, as I was saying, you see, local municipalities are generally very small. It's better to deal with them in this bigger unit, within that district development model, in that bigger unit, exactly to be able to do all of these things. Are we in this district investor friendly? We want to invest. Can we attract people? Have we got the money to build infrastructure in this district, or must it come, etc.? You need those bigger units, districts and metros, to be able to answer these questions in a practical way. Yes, indeed, matters raised correctly about political education. That your cadres, the ANC, the people that it gets it to become its cadres. It was raised earlier, they need to be developed. And point was raised about political education. That you are not going to inherit them already educated in terms of the politics and the values and so on of the ANC. The ANC has what do you call that thing, Sishle? Hang on. Normally you apply to be a member and so on. There needs to be a period, a probation period before you are admitted as a member. Now, normally what really ought to happen during that probation period is that sure this political education should be taking place. Maybe let me talk a little bit about the Communist Party. It's the SACP. It belonged during the years of illegality. During the years of illegality, to become a member of the South African Communist Party, it was by invitation. You didn't apply and say, I've got 10 rand to pay and so on. Yeah. And what would have happened is that the party comrades would have been watching you and indeed engaging you in political discussion without announcing who they are. But what you are looking at is level of understanding, of the challenges of the struggle, a level of acceptance of its values and principles, service to the people and so on, but also levels of actual practical engagement in struggle. So your probation period in the ANC case must include this person who wants to join us. To what extent are they really involved in addressing the ordinary problems of the challenges of people every day? So that you're not depending only on their capacity to recite the Freedom Charter, but you're depending also on what you can see that they're practically doing, that this person is worthy of being a member of the ANC on these grounds. So I agree with the matter, therefore I'm saying of political education, cadre development and so on. And the ANC, I think in terms of positions that the ANC has taken for many decades, if it pursued those positions, I think it would help in terms of ensuring that we then get the correct kind of cadre. I think the point that is made about community involvement in candidate selection is correct. I tried to explain under what circumstances that decision was taken. The fact that the ANC has done that, it must not be taken to mean that the responsibility of the ANC ceases to ensure that it has the right quality person, that it has the right people that it can present to the country as candidates for whatever position. You can't say we leave it to the community to help us with that and leave it at that. So the matter, therefore, of cadre development, in terms of the kind of person you need, in terms of political conviction, a value system, and so on, the ANC still has a responsibility with regard to that. I said, if we look at these proposals with regard to the economy, there are many of the questions that we're talking about, like youth, the involvement of the youth in the economy, correct. The women is the same. And our colleagues, the matters raised by our colleague from COSATU, he knows COSATU is one of the social partners. So COSATU is also making an input with regard to these matters. What kind of economy in South Africa do we want? It's very much part of this, the process of the social partners. So certainly the youth involvement is an important part of this. And the matter that's raised about our having recruited many people from the IFP, that one I can't enter that one, because I wouldn't know enough about what's happened in the province to be able to deal with a matter like that. What has happened, one of the negatives that has happened is over some years now, is that in truth, South Africa has lost a lot of credibility in the eyes of many people on our continent. The respect that there used to be, in many instances has vanished, has disappeared. And essentially because we walked away from that engagement with the rest of our continent. In many, many practical respects. For instance, as one little example, we used to have a joint committee with Mozambique. It was co-chaired by the two presidents. Mozambique has got an aluminium smelter outside of Maputo, but close enough to that harbor, Maputo harbor. That smelter is there because these two governments had a discussion. And we were very interested that Mozambique must develop in part so that you don't have a population of Mozambicans driven by unemployment, poverty from Mozambique to South Africa. Let's help Mozambique to develop so Mozambicans can stay at home and develop. I'm saying in part that was the argument. So the matter arose. The particular companies wanted to build an aluminum smelter here in South Africa. And we said, no, we talked to them and we said, look, why don't we build it? Can't you build it in Mozambique? Close to Maputo Harbor, because they need a port for their exports and imports. And that's how it happened. But we had a joint committee which was chaired by the presidents who would meet at least once a quarter to look at cooperation between the two countries. What do we do about the railway systems and the ports and this and that and the other? Movement of people about, what do we do with this Mozambique? And so many of them in the country illegally and all of that. That system collapsed. I don't know quite how, but ceased to happen. And you'd see that process of the collapse of that system of cooperation with a number of African countries. I'm saying one of the results has been that countries really lost quite a lot of prestige on the rest of the continent because we walked away from that very direct engagement with the rest of the continent, which was in our own interest. And so in that sense, the Africa vision, in a sense, disappeared. It was not a good thing. But in the end, program director, I'm very happy with the questions that were posed because all of them were very practical and focused. Because I think the time for philosophizing is over. Really, we know what the problems are, we know what the challenges are. It must answer the question, what must be done, and do it. But thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Comrade President. Let me now allocate the last 4 minutes to Comrade Notawe. So usually when a vote of thanks is conveyed, the program director doesn't come back. But I'm only going to come back if she doesn't comply with the 4 minutes rule. Comrade Notawe.
Thank you very much, Program Director, who is also the Provincial Secretary of the African National Congress in KwaZulu-Natal. Greetings to the former President, Comrade Thabo Mbeki, who is the former President of both the African National Congress and the country. Greetings to the Chairperson of the province, who is also the Premier, Comrade Sihlezi Kalala, together with the leadership of the province that is here. I saw some of them who are also MECs, and also the leadership of the Alliance, COSATU, the SACP. But special greetings to the captains of the industry that are here, the Chamber of Business led by Mr. Moses Tembe and the CEO Upalisa sitting right in front of me, the academia, the intelligentsia that is here. Without wasting any time, mine is very simple. It's just to say thank you. Thank you. And the reason why it is important for us to say thank you is I think it is critical because one of the things that President Thabo Mbeki has raised, he has raised 3 critical issues that we are grappling with as a country right now. The issue of the economy in crisis, the issue of the system of local government that is in crisis, and the issue of corruption. The beauty of these things is that the questions that you had asked as the participants of this discussion clearly shows that what he said in terms of the importance of a social compact, which means we become active participants in making sure that the country works. And I just want to thank the President first for having able to raise those questions and being able to trigger the discussion from yourselves, because what then it means is that we have the solutions amongst ourselves, how then we want the country to work. What probably is lacking is the fact that the social compact, we had left it to those that we think that are lower than us. The intelligentsia and the academia and the business people are not active in this social compact. And I think the importance of what former President has raised is that for this country to work, and for these 3 issues that he has raised in particular to improve, we need to actually stand up and become active participants. And I think the weakness that we do is that we allow government and the African National Congress to be the one that triggers you to come forward. And what former president is saying, he says, after the elections on the 1st, there is a manifesto that the ANC has put, which is commitments. The important thing is that as people that have got the capacity to checkmate both the government and the ANC, from the 2nd, you should be able to say, these are the commitments that you have made, African National Congress. Are you keeping to them? And you are not going to be able to do that if you wait for the African National Congress to be the one that calls you in. What former president is saying, he says, start being active, and you are able to say and knock on the doors of the African National Congress and say, these are the commitments that you have made. How far? What is it that we are doing better? So that the ANC does not rest on its laurels. Once you become active in making sure that the social compact that he's talking about becomes active. And I think I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for that, because what is the problem with us as South Africans right now is that we complain a lot and we then allow the ANC to be the ones that decides how then do we resolve the problems without coming forward with solutions and become active participants, particularly the academia and the business people. President says there is a recovery plan that we had put together. He says it's 30 pages. And there is another one which is now became a strategy which the business people had put together. It's about 100 of pages. How then do we make sure that these two get married and we are able to take the country forward in terms of the economic recovery? Because business people have got the solution. The ANC has got the plan, which is 30 pages, but you've got 100 pages. How then do you make sure that that synergy and working together so that ANC doesn't think that they've got monopoly of resolving the economy of this country? when you as captain of industries can be able to be active in dealing with this. And I really want us sitting here to actually appreciate the questions that we have raised, but it's not enough, those questions. What is needed now is to be able to actually become active and make sure that these things we do. President says the district development model is one way of actually making sure that this social compact becomes a reality. But it won't if us, as the people that have got the knowledge and the know-how, we sit back and allow only the branches of the African National Congress to be the one that are discussing these things, when you can actually do better and making sure that the ANC is too big to fail. It is too big to fail because if it fails, he says it collapses. He talks about the collapse of the African National Congress. And if the ANC collapses, we all collapse. Unfortunately, that's the reality. And we must be able to make sure that we don't allow it to collapse by making sure that what he talks about, that social compact, the questions that we have raised, we are able to deal and make sure that we do better. Thank you very much for your presence, and I hope that this is not going to be the last time that we interact. You call us if we don't call you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not going to indicate how many minutes she took because she's my national leader, but it was not more than 4 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and thanks a lot for you to allow me to drive the program. Let me now allow the President and my leadership here to exit while we stand up, and as they reach the back there, we all follow up or follow out to our different directions. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chief. Thank you. The bank card is still with me, and the pin at the back is written.
I'll take it.
It's a black